Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to How to Make a Scene, our ongoing series on Lumpen Radio and at Co-Prosperity. I'm Brandon Alvendia, thrilled to continue the journey exploring the artist-run cultural ecosystems of the 80s, 90s, and today in Chicago. How to Make a Scene is a collaborative effort between the Public Media Institute, the parent non-for-profit of Lumpen Radio and Co-Prosperity, and MDW, a coalition of Midwestern art organizations. The series is supported by the Terra Foundation for American Art as part of a citywide Art Design Chicago initiative. Our aim is to connect veteran artist organizers with those working today through intimate events at Co-Prosperity, broadcasts on Lumpen Radio, and live streams on LumpenTV. Through the end of the year, we'll continue to explore Chicago's deep artist-run history and alternative gallery spaces, independent publications, and socially engaged collectives. Our discussions have been led by moderators who engage with artists who have built experimental infrastructures of support for themselves and their peers. These gatherings are platforms for sharing generational knowledge, informal oral histories, and strategizing for future impact. Today's panel has been curated by and will be moderated by Chicago reader, editor-in-chief Salem Collo-Julin, whose legendary Chicago art career has included work on such iconic projects as Temporary Services and Mess Hall. Salem will be joined by panelists Rosé Hernandez, Travis P. Michael, and Wei Wang, who will share their unique perspectives on building experimental infrastructures for creative communities. Now I'll introduce Salem, who will introduce our panelists. Salem Collo-Julin is editor-in-chief of Chicago Reader. Collo-Julin has served on the editorial staff of the Reader since 2019. From 1999 to 2014, Collo-Julin was a member of the Midwestern art group Temporary Services and co-edited the book Prisoner's Inventions, White Walls 2003. She also co-founded Temporary Services publishing imprint Half Letter Press. In addition to her work with the Reader, their writing has been found in the Windy City Times, the Journal of Aesthetics and Protest, Lumpen, Area Chicago, the book Organize Your Own, edited by Anthony Romero, by Sober Scove Press, 2016, and other publications. They are a native Chicagoan, and their favorite Chicago alt bi-weekly besides The Reader is the defunct Chicago Seed, 1967 to 1974. Thanks for being here. We're excited to continue exploring Chicago's vibrant cultural history. Now I'll hand it over to Salem and our esteemed panelists.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming. So we're going to start with the land acknowledgement, and then I'm going to introduce all of these fine people to my left, your right, and then away we go. I began by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered today and pay my respect to their elders, past and present. Chicago is the traditional homeland of the Council of the Three Fires, the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes like the Miami, Ho-Chunk, Sac, and the Fox also once called this area home. And please remember that we are all always on native lands. I also want to recognize and welcome any elders in the space, and that is a mental state, not just a year. So if you're feeling older, it's because life is tough. So welcome today, and to anyone who will be listening to this online. Thank you for carrying the triumph of Chicago along with you. Chicago is joy. Thank you for sticking around in our American cities. Okay, so this panel is part of a series that is looking at artist-run spaces and artist-run culture, and one of the things that appealed to me about this series, just seeing the first three sessions, is how much people kind of dwell in the space of what was, but also what can be. And so it was important for me to talk to some people that, first of all, have performance art in some way in their practices, I would argue, are all noisy and quiet in their own ways, I would argue, everybody here, but also I thought might have some very good and also kind of hard things to talk about in their Chicago time here. All of these people have been in various collectives, bands, have done performance on their own, have collaborated in duos, have been part of groups and spaces that some still exist, some don't. So that's what we're going to try to talk about today. I'm going to go down the row and introduce our panelists to you all first, for anybody who doesn't know. So at the opposite end of the table for me is Rosé Hernandez. Thank you. Yep. She is a multifaceted artist and healer based in Chicago and originally from Dallas, Texas. Since moving to Chicago in 2006 to study at the School of the Art Institute, she's become a prominent figure in the local art scene. Hernandez co-leads the arts collective Burning Orchid and founded The Energetic Body, which focuses on wellness through healing energy, herbalism, and performance art. Her work explores themes of body, desire, and spirituality, often integrating practices like Butoh and Reiki to foster human connection and healing. And I'll be asking you a little bit about that when we get there. And next to Rosé is Wei Wang, who's a prominent figure in the Chicago avant rock scene. Known for his work in the industrial gospel punk band Oh No, but also as an improviser in Street Tentacle. His fractured and atonal guitar style blends elements of, there are Street Tentacle fans about, okay. Blends elements of Dada funk, existential doom, and ambient raga using extended techniques to create dense and textured soundscapes. Solo album, which take a listen, it's good. Liquid Metal Core was released by Asian Improv Records in 2021, and that showcases his distinctive rough guitar work, and also features drummer Ben Karras from Ono, who you will hear later on today. This is just going to be a recording of us applauding ourselves, which we should do more of that. That's fine. Let's totally do that. That's one thing that didn't happen after COVID that I wanted, more people celebrating themselves. Okay, next we have our Alexis, or Crystal. Travis is the front man of the gospel punk band Oh No. Yes. A legendary experimental band from Chicago that has been pushing the boundaries of music and performance art since 1980. Known for his powerful vocal performances and unique stage presence, Travis channels deep themes of trauma, spirituality, and conflict into the band's immersive shows. His collaboration with Ono's co-founder P. Michael has made the group a staple of Chicago's underground music scene, offering audiences a profound and transformative experience. And just to my left, P. Michael, founding member of the noise gospel band Ono. Does it seem like a lot of these people are involved in the band Ono? Since 1980. Was born in Hyde Park. I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. Into a music-loving family. His father was a jazz saxophonist, and he's related to Pete Cosi, who played with Miles Davis. Mm-hmm. Raised in West Chesterfield, the neighborhood known for its influential black musical artists, P. Michael is a multi-instrumentalist trained in music theory by soul ranger James Mack. He attended the School of the Art Institute for film and printmaking and St. Xavier for pre-med biology, and graduated from Roosevelt University, downtown, with a Bachelor of Arts in Arts and Sciences in 1984. So thank you to all of my panelists. Thanks everybody for coming. This is it. Good luck. Have a good night. No, just kidding. Okay. So I prefaced talking with you all today with a couple of questions that I sent over email, but after hearing all of these biographies, and thank you, Brandon, for putting some of that together from things that you all have put into public. One thing that crept in to everybody was spirituality, mm-hmm. And it's a broad and weird term for a lot of people, but it seems to be so important for all of your work. And so I'm wondering if any of you want to start out with giving me a sense of, I don't think a young artist necessarily starts out being a spiritual artist unless
your family beats it into you.
Well, there's yeah, there you go.
If your father's a jazz saxophone player, you got spirituality.
That's true. And you all do talk about yourselves as a gospel punk, kind of ensemble. But Rosé's spirituality is part of I feel like everything you do with your performance and then also with your dance. Can you talk a little bit about how that journey started for you in your life? I'm assuming you weren't a 10-year-old doing Butoh and Reiki.
Yeah, I was, though.
Oh!
No. I felt that I was. I felt, before I even know what even Butoh was or what it was I was doing, it's kind of like something that has always grown with me. It's really hard for me to really divide my performance practice from my spiritual practice because they're so ingrained into like who I am as a person. I grew up, in a Catholic family, and I was always so enamored with, the beauty and ritual of Catholicism, and being in sort of like cathedral spaces and being told to stand up and to sit down and when to take communion and being confirmed and then learning the lives of the saints and how kind of magnificent it was. Like it felt so real to me. Even through the process of transubstantiation and when you're eating, the body and the blood of Christ, like it's really happening, in that moment. You are consuming and you are becoming one with the Lord. And it wasn't until I kind of like fell away from it, as a adolescent and, realizing that like as a queer person, like maybe it wasn't okay and that's what they told me. I had to really find something that really wanted to tie me back to the world. And that was always something spiritual, right? And so I always felt like this like large presence that always surrounded me, and I always felt it when I was talking with someone, talking with elders, talking with friends, dancing, in club spaces and dancing in people's houses, like in the street. Like I've always felt this force that always tied me back to the earth, right? And so I see, whatever people tend to call it, people call it energy, people call it God, but like I feel that when I'm really present in the moment and through performance or through a conversation or holding someone's hand, it's all interconnected. And so it's really, I try to find that with the work that I make. If it's something that I don't feel or if it's something that feels inauthentic, it's not worth producing,
I totally relate to that, and I think there's a lot of people who, kind of all of our relapsed Catholicism pushes itself into performance in some ways because you are taught from an early age that, you are actually eating the body of Christ, when you get this thing, and so you have to make this leap in your head that this thing that is not real is very real. But also I'm reminded, I think it's Drew from Matmos, but I can't remember, Drew Daniel. I can't remember if it was his essay or somebody else's, where they're talking about like the altar that is the dance floor, especially in queer dance spaces, right? Because it's finally this coming together of groups of people where for a lot of us you were forced to be a part or forced to not be actually part of that group, and the transcendence of the music and the revelation of dance together in these kind of often dark, often loud. It's like almost a rebirth for a lot of queer people. So yeah, that's so wonderful. I see that in your work a lot. Wei, I was just telling you before we started, and this is, I don't even know why I'm going on to this trip, but maybe I'm being led by something. So last night I listened to, you did a collaborative album with Tetsuo Yogi, who is a musician and also a professor here in Chicago, longtime jazz musician, pretty revered. And I was struck by how different that album, it's from 2022, and I was struck by how different that album was from some of the stuff that I know of you through your work with Ono, of course, and other collaborations. But ragas are a big deal in that album. I feel like every one of those songs is a raga. But is this also kind of the path that you take when you're creating, when you're composing, or is it kind of a less deep thing? Is it just?
Yeah, I don't know if I would call it spirituality. Yeah, that particular duo album with Tatsuyoki, I play, just as a background information, I play guitar, and Tatsuyoki plays shamisen, which is a traditional folk Japanese kind of a lute. It's like a 4-string lute with giant, frets. So, and it's electrified, and it's purple, so it's pretty funky, shamisen. So yeah, that album, I think later on, like as my career developed, I think I started to just sort of mature a little bit, and I started to go more for sounds that are kind of expansive or atmospheric. And when Tatsu approached me to record a duo album, I thought a perfect complement to his more folk, melodic kind of meanderings would be more of like an expansive, atmospheric kind of environmental sound to lay a background for his more direct melodic leanings. So in that regard, I'm really interested in like ambient music and environmental music, and Ono definitely falls in line with this. So in that regard, I kind of like creating music where people feel like they are being transported outside of their bodies. Maybe not necessarily in a spiritual sense, but maybe in a communal sense with the world. So in that regard, perhaps it's more of spiritual, like just trying to get people to forget their individuality and try to sort of have their senses touch more upon the world, spatially, sound-wise, environmentally. So in that sense, I think of my music as I try to reach towards a spiritual. As far as any religiosity, I think a lot of the spirituality in music, and especially displayed by Ono's music, is the sense of community that's created by music and by artwork. Whether or not you can debate whether or not there's a superior being, a creator or whatnot, but I think that the sense of community that music creates and the sense of tribal togetherness, to me, that's sort of a feeling of spirituality and religiosity. So I think music definitely creates that. It creates a community feeling of people together with a like-minded sentiment.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the journey that a lot of young people take when you decide to dive into a city, right? You're looking for, like you're reenacting certain kind of pieces of your family and your childhood that didn't exist for you or didn't exist in the way that you needed them to, and you kind of recreate your world, right, with all these new people that think in similar ways to you. I want to talk to Travis and Michael together for a little bit, because your partnership in the arts, and your friendship might, and I'm sorry to say this to put you on the line here, but it might predate some of the people in this room. So
It might what now?
it might your friendship might predate some of the people in this room.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Although I don't, because there's somebody in a stroller in here, so that's okay. All of our friendships predate that
Yeah,
person.
it's pretty old.
In
So-
just a few weeks, in just 3 weeks, I'll be 78 years old.
No way. Oh, that's
Way,
awesome.
way.
That's awesome. And when you both met, were you both, Travis, you had been out of the service for about, 10 years before Ono started. But were you both students in the 70s, or?
I was a student when I met Travis. I was going to go. I was actually at. I had just left St. Xavier in pre-med, and I was studying at Kennedy King. I was doing restaurant management, and I was getting ready to go to the Art Institute in Roosevelt. So I was going to 3 schools, and I could kind of.
Why'd you leave pre-med?
Because it was Catholic. It was a Catholic school.
Oh, okay.
And Catholicism and me don't
See, it all
get
comes
along
through.
too well. It was run by nuns. It was run by nuns. And I have a thing about nuns, and unfortunately, I know
Yeah, they
I
float.
go way back with nuns. I go back
Blood purges.
before when you could only see this much of them. So the mystery of Jesus was a true mystery, because it's like you didn't know what the hell was underneath. You didn't know what the hell was underneath there. And so I was telling the nuns that back when I was, from grade kindergarten to 6, I was in Catholic school until they put me out, because I shared with the nuns that I didn't think that they had any legs underneath all that crap. Because I heard one scratching, and it sounded like she was scratching on wood, and I said, wow, they got wooden legs. So they told my mother that this child's got to go. I can't say so. I went there through half of 6th grade, and they said, take them over to the Episcopalians.
Okay.
So they dropped me off at the Episcopalians, and I'm about to go to a reunion of my Episcopalian choir school, my British choir school that they put me in from 6th grade to 8th grade.
Wow.
So I was put out of the Catholic school, Catholic education. Although I still go back for the reunions because I love the kids, but I just can't deal with the nuns. They just make me nervous. And when they brought me over to med school, they sat me down and did an interview with cookies and lemonade, and that freaked me out. Although the nun wasn't wearing all that crap, so she had real hair and everything, and that kind of creeped me out too, because it's like, well, where's the rest of it?
Right.
And she said, well, this is modern times. I said, okay, this is the 80s, so we don't do that anymore. I was abhorred.
And Travis, you were not in school. I know that you went to school a little bit later, but
Well, I had been at Akron University before leaving the sixth. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure that I could be heard if you needed me, but I'll be nice, civilized. And yes, I was at Akron University from '63. Actually, the problem there was I graduated from high school. And there was nothing to do for black male in Akron, Ohio, if you're not even 16 years, well, there was nothing to do but go to Akron University. And Akron University was founded by, the president had been KKK, there's a whole region that is related to the politics of the KKK. And so I told my mother I wanted to join the military. I wanted to join the Navy and see the world. And my mother said, John F. Kennedy just got killed, the world's going to change. And I said, well, if you don't sign for me, I'll get someone who will. I was becoming my mother, I believe, because my mother left a little place in Mississippi where there, even to this day, aren't even 200 people. She left there at age 18 almost, went 25 miles south to a place called Carter's Chapel and became housekeeper and food person for the Carter families who settled it, who were Native American and African American. And my mother, being the politician that she was, and I feel that a lot of women protect their ovaries this way, decided that she wanted a child by the great-grandson of the Carters. And here I am. And so she then goes back to Itawamba County, and I am born, and she goes, I'm born, and she runs off and becomes a biker. The original, well, I'll be nice. Yes, a biker, and no one had ever seen a bike before. That led me then to this family of Carters who then immediately immersed me in all things written. I had a typewriter before I even knew what it meant, before I couldn't even carry it, but I became immensely involved in, well, how does language work? What do words do? those kinds of things. From there, I went off to the military and spent 6 years, and after that, studied Kundalini. Kundalini was very good for me, and I had taken my vows and was headed to New Mexico forever to study with Harbhajan Singh.
Were you intending to be a practitioner?
Oh, yeah.
And this was post-Navy time, right?
No, this was right after the Navy. I got out and I said, okay, now here I am back in the world. I'm in Ohio again. Oh, life still hasn't. I became a Kundalini Sikh, started studying, and then when it's time for me to take my final vows, I move across country driving, had given up everything in the world, and stopped in Chicago in August, and that was my downfall, because in August in Chicago, well, life gets pretty precious, and I decided to get a job for the summer, and eventually at Northwestern University School of Law. They hired me because by then I typed 100 words a minute without error and 140 words a minute Greg Jubilee shorthand. So they hired me for the summer and gave me a typewriter, and I said, no, I'm not going to use a typewriter. I've spent the last 6 years teaching computers. And they still hired me, and we turned the whole of Northwestern University School of Law into computers, the first ones ever. Wow. It's at that point that one of the people I worked with was a woman called Amanda Wallace Brooks, and she had a daughter, Kathy Brooks, who was one of the wildest women also, besides my mother, who had a friend named P. Michael Grego, and they started hanging out in my office, and he wanted to start a band. I said, no! Because I don't like music, don't want to be involved in all these crazy people that are in music. I am not interested in all this. And this went on until he kept coming and pressing it. And I said, finally, January 5th, 1980, okay, I decided, well, why not give this a chance? Why not do something radically different, something you don't like, and then change it? And so I said, okay, we'll do this, but I'm not interested in music. Forget the music. I'll do sound. I'll do performance. I'll do other things. And that is why I insisted on writing a statement of purpose and that we still adhere to. Other than that, I have no interest in doing music. Well, I had been in Mississippi, and to your point on spirituality, I didn't have God of the Catholics. I didn't, and much later, when I got to Northwestern University, eventually from the work that I did, they made me their Employee of the Year. I can get classes as much as I want, and I was on the Dean's List, so they said, as long as you're on the Dean's List, we'll pay for everything. So I stayed on the Dean's List for 10 years. Yeah. And that meant that we could do all of these things and challenge the status quo. I challenged 1452 when the Pope said that black bodies would be for all eternity, for all perpetuity, enslaved to Portugal and Spain. Whereas I had to then refer back to Mississippi, and in Mississippi, it's, oh, were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes. And so that came from a very different place than a pope telling me that I'm going to be some white man's slave for all perpetuity. Right. And it still means a lot more. So that is the challenge that I bring not only to my approach to art, but to performance. And so it so happens that this madman who was having his own problems that I didn't know anything about found me, and then out of that comes God knows what. And so
we were always ahead. We were one step ahead. I mean, he had the computers, and so did Rick. We didn't believe in just the regular guitar, bass, and drums, which got us into a lot of trouble because we were using stuff that you weren't supposed to be using. We had a guitar here and there and a little keyboard, but it was the crap around that got us in trouble. I mean, the show that we did, one show at Metro where Rick brought on his what computer? His Apple computer, and he put the microphone up to it, and he programmed it so that it would sing ground control to Major Tom. So the computer, we gave the computer a solo, so we gave the computer song, and it was like, what the hell is that? It's like, you're not supposed to do that on stage.
The approach
in punk
to
rock
performance, and eventually at Northwestern I studied not only performance art but performance studies with Dr. Dwight Punkergood, which then was, and I overlaid that with vernacular architecture, and eventually graduated with straight A's for that entire period. Oh God! And so for all that was happening at that point, well then, here I am thinking, oh, I can do all these fun things that engage the architectural environment. Hanging sheet metal from the ceiling or on the floor and amplifying it, and that kind of thing. Or as we did with Rosé at the David Bowie Is performance, do you remember? Yeah. And it was most radical, and all of this noise, and Rosé is making all sorts of radical noise, and it's rolling about through the audience and scowling, doing its incredibly mad things, while I had 30 years of hair down to my knees, and it was being chopped off at that same moment, and people wept in the audience. That's an approach to performance that I think brings us all the people that you see here together, and people who are in the audience, to do that
many times.
The radical. And so that is a spirituality that I deal with, a Mississippian inspired. I have a huge problem with, for instance, 1452 and papal bulls telling me that humans are this, especially since they had by that time enslaved of the female body for all perpetuity, and now the black body for all perpetuity. Where do those things intersect, and what is my responsibility as a performer, as an artist, to overcome those issues, or at least cause people to talk about them bravely?
Right. I'd say for anybody who's not familiar, please go to Travis's website where you can see and read the initial manifesto, but also one thing and I'm glad that you mentioned that you were using computers early, because now everything's falling into place for me, for both of you, but also for some of the other things that I've taken in of the genre. So I feel like sometimes when newer to the game folks, not necessarily younger, but people who are first getting into looking at performance art, we think that certain radical things have only happened in the last 10 years, but computer art, video art, all of this stuff is now a very old practice in a lot of ways. And so
significantly, many of the rules at the Art Institute are now there because of the things Ono did at Space, and they won't allow kids to do those things anymore.
You can't bring blood and dirt and stuff into art galleries anymore. You can't bring glass. You can't break glass.
Right, and so it was ugly for a very long time.
Ask Al. Alex out there. When
Yes!
He brought a car engine in and put the horn on at one of the things we all did together.
So that's what I want to talk to you all about. Let's talk about some Chicago moments here, not just in your practices, but stuff that you all have been able to witness other people doing. Because I think in Chicago, this is my theory. Please disprove me. We've got 7 different universities over the course of the last 100 years that have brought artists, musicians here to study, right? And a lot of lofty ideas, but then we're also this working class city. So in order to deal with all those ideas, you have to make the art. So I think that we've always had this incredible practice here. But there's a lot of people and spaces that kind of, I think, only are supposed to exist for a certain amount of time, and especially in noise music and performance art. Tell me about some of the stuff that you experienced.
I'll let Michael go there, but just before you do, on your point, I think that winter and the ugly, ugly winter and weather here plays a heavy role, and people really just can't wait to get out of their house and out of their clothes and everything else when spring finally comes around, and so that you see this flowering. I think that has a huge impact on the way that people and what they create.
That's true. We should have a side conversation, though, because winter's my favorite. Yeah, because there's nobody outside.
I do like
You just
winter.
need to learn to layer. Michael.
I was just going to name a bunch of spaces that are no longer with us. Rest in peace. And just so that to name places that that we've played that were like not legitimate. So 1901 Gallery is where we worked with the what do they call that? Burlesque. We did the burlesque show, and we did the show that we dedicated to the Marquis de Sade with Ruth Oppenheimer, and she read Cause Justine. We did Fred Burkhardt. That was another burlesque gallery. Enemy, which is now Titrangle, was where we also recorded. We did a video for, and we almost set fire to the curtains. We did a video for Model Bride. Situations, where we worked with Rosé, and that was in the basement. That lasted a long time. The Dust Bowl, dirty, nasty place it was very much a whole lot of drugs and junkies, and they stole my bass amp there, but that's okay.
And cops.
I got another one the next day.
And cops. Don't forget the cops.
Nowhereville, that was a very obscure, crazy place. Pound Town.
Yeah.
The Mopery, that was insane. Oh, yeah. That place was a swamp, basically. It was a loft with tents, and they were living in tents around everything. It was huge. It was it used to be an old carpeting place or something, and now I think it's a health club. Club Templehead, the Church of Templehead. That was Rosé. Rosé. And Heather Lynn, and they did a lot of spiritual stuff and movement and plays and community healing. Multiculti, that was a crazy three-dimensional place over on when you come off the expressway right there in that crazy
Did you
building.
just say three-dimensional place?
It feels like it was like multi-dimensional. That's why they called it multi-dimensional.
Okay.
Because they had all sorts of different types of genres there, and they did like video and stuff. And it was a place where people lived. The Reversible Eye, people lived there as well, right. And we used to do a lot of crazy stuff there. Mount Happy was the crust punk place where they had the banisters 3 stories up, and the banisters were gooey. And we're like sugar,
a lot of roaches.
We're coated with sugar, and they would sell you vegan food that was suspicious, that they probably
protein.
got out of the dumpster
Suspicious
because they were
vegan
very
food.
much into recycling, but they were really young. That was a wonderful place. That's where we met Dawei.
No, we met earlier than that. We met earlier than
Well,
that.
we met
I
earlier,
dragged you out.
but you played there with us. Observatory. That was
Wait. Were you selling the suspicious vegan food?
No, they were. The crust punks
Okay.
were.
Oh, okay.
Dawei
You
was-
just happened to be there.
Dawei's
You weren't-
band was
an
playing, and
interesting-
our band was playing.
Yeah, they were
Mount Happy,
anarcho.
Very anarchy.
Yeah,
The observatory, which was way up on the top of a furniture store out in where is that? What's
that was
the name
on
of
Belmont. Yeah, on Belmont.
Yeah, that place was crazy, and I love that place. Bobby's Basement. We was downstairs. We played amongst the laundry and the dryers and stuff in Bobby's basement. It was in Humboldt Park. The White Hills Gallery, that was over near Humboldt, and that's where they had the paper mache shark above your head, life-size, huge paper mache shark. They were wonderful. Mortville, now that had 3 levels.
Yeah.
3 levels.
Yeah, they had Treasure Town below it.
Treasure Town.
Mortville.
And we played all 3 levels.
And
Mortville,
a giant weed garden.
Mortville was more like a kind of like a Captain Kangaroo.
Did everybody here play Bitchpork?
That
at
we
some
played
point?
Bitchpork at
Yeah.
Mortville. We played it.
Rosé, did you as well?
I
Okay.
didn't, but I was there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was one of our breakout
The
things.
festival. that
Didn't
went
you
on.
play Mortville?
I did play Mortville a couple of times. yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was a fantastic place.
Yes.
It was one of the best places I've ever performed at.
Incredible.
It was the kind of place which, well, these are places I would never have set foot in, except that I was told to be there. And so I went and I dealt with all the musicians and all that went with that. And, well, then comes the day first my mother dies. And no tears. I mean, she lived well. The woman was a biker. And she lived a biker lifestyle. I am my mother's son. Well, my mother dies, and my sisters, I have no brothers. My sisters decide that, no, we're going to revive the body. My mother had no resuscitation. Well, they did. They turned the body upside down. She comes back to life. They then take her to this hospital, and I then drive there to see what's going on. And the hospital gives me a suite of rooms and all that across from her, and I'm thinking, oh, this is kind of weird. I'm in talking to her, and they had put a tube in her trach. So I said, that's weird. I've never seen that before. And my mother said to me, take this tube out of my throat. And I said, Mother, do you realize that means that you would die and I would die too, because they would kill me for killing my mother? And mind you, all this is being recorded and all this. Well, she then decides, okay, my mother was so weird. She gets completely well to go home. Everybody gathers around, everybody, friends and family from everywhere, and they come in, and she dies again. And that was the end of that.
Right.
Well, on the day she's buried, I get a flight I organize everything, or I think I am, but I get there to discover she's done everything. But I fly from Midway to Cleveland, then from Cleveland get a rental car, then go to Akron, bury my mother, go through all of the funeral and all that goes with that, and then get back into the car, drive back to Cleveland, fly back to Chicago, and Mortville, Oh No goes on at Mortville.
In the meat locker. We're playing in the meat locker.
In the meat locker.
Which are refrigerated unit.
It's all on video. It was the weirdest day.
So you went straight to Mortville from the
Straight to
airport?
Mortville. And not just the main stage. Mortville had this great stage out there. But no, we didn't want to do the great stage. We created our own stage in the meat locker. Swept it and swept up all the doggy do and cat do and everything else. And then redecorated it and played it right after my mom.
It was a metal floor, because it was a real storage unit for meat.
Yeah.
So if we take Mortville as just an example, right? So it's like, to me, that's kind of a classic artist-run space in a lot of ways. Because does anyone, and audience, you might want to chime in too, because I know some of you have been to these places, but does anyone know what the factory or the company was? I thought it was like a box making place or something like that.
It was 3 different levels, so maybe the second floor, Treasure Town, maybe that was the box.
No, they had a weed.
Treasure Town.
They had a weed factory in the basement.
And in the basement,
Yeah,
we played in the
they had a
basement
straight-up
too.
weed corporation
we
down there.
played on
Yeah.
the loading dock.
Yeah, they were providing for maybe half Chicago. I don't know.
It was a huge building.
Yeah, they got
Oh,
busted.
okay.
Yeah.
But before that, I think it was a factory of some sort
Yeah,
that
it
made
had to
things
be,
or something.
yeah.
But then weed factory.
Yeah.
So this to me, for better or worse, is kind of like the trajectory, the journey that a lot of these places take, right? You know, it's just kind of industry has fallen apart.
Yeah.
There's an open space. I'm an artist. I like having a lot of space, and people want space to perform, and then you take over that space, and then you go.
Club Rectum is next, where you enter in the rear.
Wait, does that? I didn't quite catch that. Does that exist on?
That was the catchphrase. That's where Chewy Garcia came for one night, and we played. Yeah. We did a benefit for Chewy Garcia. So Chewy Garcia came up to Club Rectum and he entered through the rear.
It was such a great place.
Where was that?
Club Rectum was way up on Milwaukee, and where Milwaukee meets. It's
Logan Square.
Yeah,
Over by
Logan
there.
Square. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Milwaukee goes sideways, and it's
Yeah.
built past Diversity. It was on the way. It was someone's private apartment, but the back part,
Okay.
you had to enter through the back, and it was like a place with primarily very, very intense, dirty, very much noise. Very
Yeah.
much a noise place.
Yeah. Are there other spaces that we haven't mentioned? This is an amazing list that
Ball
you've...
Hall was where they lived. It was in Humboldt Park.
yeah.
They lived there, and that was a really incredible space. And Wally World.
And a lot of this stuff, like from this list, the majority of the stuff I'm remembering from maybe earliest 90s, but then there's this whole kind of other history.
Young
that we
Camelot,
haven't gotten
Hostel,
into.
Euphoria. Those are Ben used to stay at both of them.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The flower shop.
Flower shop and
Max
the
Flower
bakery.
shop. Flower
The
shop.
bakery. Yeah. And we did play a very weird show. We played at Paradise, which was a gay discotheque, a huge gay discotheque, right there on the corner where Diversey and meets Clark, and it was Paradise, but we played in the front part before you get to the disco part. But that was a very unusual thing. They had like something going on, a special thing going on there. So it was like a notorious, huge gay disco.
And we
So-
also played this this bathhouse.
Oh yeah, we played at the Bijou, the gay man's bathhouse.
Oh yes,
Okay.
and
It
that
was a defrocked bathhouse because by then they had put everybody out.
What era was that in?
But the comps were still there.
Aren't they still open though? They're still open, right? They're actually a legitimate theater though. They're not
I don't know if it's any. If
not
it's,
necessarily DIY.
I don't know if it's.
But
you
They're
can
like a
smell. You
theater.
can smell it.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We took a
It's
tour.
now
we
it
took a tour of
closed.
the dungeons.
It's now Joan Cusack's trinket shop.
It's what now?
Yeah.
What is
Yeah,
it?
it's an old town. Joan Cusack's trinket shop.
Wow.
So yeah, I've also performed at the Bijou in the Circle Jerk Theater, and I remember. I asked about it again. They were like, "Oh, they sold the shop," and then my friend got a hold of the neon sign that used to hang out outside of the theater, but they sold it now. There's like it's right across from the Spice House, and now it's Joan Cusack's trinket shop. But they used to have wild performances there too. But but it was, it was at one point it's like the oldest like gay movie theater.
Yeah.
Yep. These
And
are just off the top of my head.
With
but there's more.
XXX rated movies, we
Oh,
should
yeah.
say too, right?
They
You know,
projected
so
them
there's
over
that.
us when we played.
Right, right. So it's
Yeah,
funny.
we got golden showers.
Travis was coming and
Golden
going.
showers.
So Travis, you had mentioned earlier about like in the first days of Ono, I'd say, in the early 80s, like you ended up using a lot of the resources that your job was giving you for not only, time, but space, right? You actually all ended up performing at different unused places at Northwestern's law school, Tell me a little bit about what it would take to have a DIY space in that era, as much as Travis and Michael, you can remember Chicago in that era. Like, was there an opening there for people to be making this kind of weird work?
Well, I think that what was happening mostly was that there were all these art students who were looking for things to do before and after school, and so there were places that were open all night long and closed in the morning. It was very New York style. Well, the problems that people had with school or with teenage rebellion and all that goes with that, all of those things, I think, overlaid what was happening on stage. They saw a reflection, and that meant that a lot of owners, of spatial owners, who realized that, well, these kids are not going away because they will graduate, but they're going to be replaced, and so there's potential for that. And so those spaces, I think, became more and more important for folks who were involved in art. I was not so much involved in looking at how places are developed as I was saying to P. Michael, okay, yes, I'll write a piece for this and I'll write a piece for that. Oh no, he's never had to wait for Travis to write some words for it. And he was in the thick of the folks at Roosevelt, at School of the Art Institute, whereas I was in the thick of Northwestern. Northwestern was an entirely different animal at that time. And by the time I got to graduate school, because I said, oh, well, I've got straight A's so far, why stop now? And so I went on to graduate school, and NU at that point became very pivotal in this whole performance theory world where John Cage and the like were competing, and then Julius Eastman then came to Northwestern and blew them all out of the water by writing his Nigger series, and I was there for that, and that was a pivotal moment for everybody, but in terms of using that, it was impossible to use it. For instance, in Evanston, Evanstonians weren't going to have that, or Northbrook, or Winnetka and the like. However, downtown, the kids were, P. Michael was in the thick of all of that and could sense the temperature of academia down there. And so that's how I think a lot of this worked. So when we were told on a couple of occasions, you'll never play this town again, or something like to that effect. Well,
I don't want to.
And then we played Northwestern, Evanston, and Chicago, and then all the kids started coming there and making films. And so, P. Michael's better to tell you about that.
That's where we ran into Lydia Lunch at Northwestern, because they hired her to play there before she played at Metro, and we played with her. So we knew Lydia Lunch from Northwestern when she played for the college students.
So,
and that was interesting.
And it's very valuable to know, like, and support the people who end up working for these universities in programming for, like the auditoriums, but also your librarians, so they can buy all of the stuff that you are making and make sure that it gets into the archives properly. So if you've put out your own record, please send it to a librarian immediately. So I feel like I could talk to the four of you for hours and hours and hours, but I don't want to take up all of that of your life, but I do have a couple of more things that I wanted to ask. So I'm going to go for the big one, and then I'm going to ask Michael and Travis to tell a story that I think is hilarious, that I think people should just hear about, in the spirit of making this kind of hard work and also thinking about Chicago in the 80s. So, but first of all, what does Chicago, so all of you are currently making work and making this work and working in Chicago, right? And those are all those are all big crosses to bear in my estimation. I love the city, but I know it's very hard to be here sometimes for a lot of different reasons. What does Chicago need to do for you personally? And what does the rest of Chicago need to do for people who make the kind of work you do, whether it's art, music, dance?
I have no use for Chicago. Well, we don't play here that much anyway. We mostly go on tour, and we only play here when they beg. And they have to really, 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 really beg. I came here to play this because of you. I dig you, so I came to see you.
And Rosé.
And Rosé. But otherwise, Chicago can kiss my ass. I had enough of y'all. Not y'all per se, but I mean the real Chicago, not you guys. You all folks are cool, but you know the real people that live here.
Well, I think that, well, we can go down that road, but we can come back to that later.
Yeah,
I'm going to
he can be nice.
Instead actually, usually P. Mike is more diplomatic than I am because I get to the history. I wrote my master's thesis in history, and the history that I see ain't pretty, and I'm not part of it. And so those are the kinds of things, since in my world, as I see it, all art is based in conflict. Without conflict, you really don't have a product. And so once you look at the black body, what more conflict is there? I mean, look about you and think about, if you think about art, take a ride down to my neighborhood and all the stuff that's lovely on film as art that you can see and then go home, it's all day and all night in my neighborhood, and you don't deal with it very well. However, what can Chicago do, I think, is a very important question. At my age, precious little, because I'm supposed to be dead at age 69 and I'm 78 now. However, I think that it is important for city leaders to consider the aged and aging body of the artist and what can it do for that city, because that is where you have all of this information. You have, storehouses, and what happens, people just die. They have no outlet. And in some cases, just dying is a relief. Those things are relevant, and I could go on to that for quite a while. I can talk about how Chicago deals with real estate for old people, for instance, and the lack of support, and that's a whole that is very troubling. With COVID, companies have come into neighborhoods like mine and bought all of this property. For instance, a house that is adjoining mine, and the companies disappear, put people there, and the companies are never heard from again, and now my property is being flooded, and they don't take care of it, and I've complained to the city. What have I gotten from 8 complaints? They sued me. We can go there, and I'd love to tell you that story. It's ugly, however, but not today. I'll write you.
No, I want to hear that in my work
because
capacity,
it's not. I'm not an isolated case.
Right.
I am more importantly interested in what Chicago can do for its youth as well. Here we are with all of these folks who now with COVID we see a whole other generation evolving. Well, what do you do how does Chicago approach its youth, both black and white? We don't know who we are as black children. We don't know who we are as white children. We do not know how we got to this position, and it's all political and religious. We got here that way, but we don't approach it. When will we approach it? Will kids have to rebel in the street? Will women have to carry weapons? Where you don't have to go very far to see and feel what is happening to the world around you. Now, what I did last year, and every year where I'm from, born and raised in Mississippi, there is homecoming. I'm a black male wearing an Ole Miss t-shirt. How weird is that? Is that some weird shit or what? Yes. Well, the Ole Miss Rebels, as they are known, the biggest school in Mississippi and well known for what it has always done and provided. However, built on the backs of blacks and women, which we don't like to think about, well, Chicago can learn from the Ole Miss of today. Last year, on a tour with Jordan Reyes through Mississippi, we went to the University of Mississippi Library and the Center for the Study of Southern Culture. They want me to come and do presentations there because now this idea of the Ole Miss Rebel, they want to see how they can translate that for a new generation. And as a result, they're bringing in all these black kids who would never otherwise even be interested in what academia provides or could provide for them. Who knows what it will provide, but at least it gets them reading their own history. And that is significant because reading and studying your own history is weaponry. Weaponry, weaponry. It's artillery. Use it. And so, being in that environment and hearing those people at the top of the Old University of Mississippi talking about how they're bringing in women and black students who could not afford it, and giving free tuitions and making this and translating the past into a whole new future is something Chicago could take a lot of lessons from, because at one point when I was in grad school, Chicago had there were more people from Mississippi than from any other singular place in the country.
And let's see how reparations go in Evanston, right? You know, like little.
Don't get me started.
Well, it's too late for that. What else can Chicago be doing for you all as practitioners? Dawei, it looks like you've got.
Yeah, I can just speak to my own experience. I would think, just more funding opportunities for artists to be able to produce their artwork and to be able to publish it without having to worry about, budget issues or budget limitations or whether or not they actually have to sell a product to be successful. So at least in my experience, what I found, I've stumbled upon the Illinois Arts Council and also Chicago DCASE, the Department of Chicago Department of DCASE, Special Events. Mm-hmm. Yeah, special
culture
events.
And
Culture and special events. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you. So they, so they provide grants, and they provide funding for you to be able to publish your artwork and not have to worry about the marketing or capital consequences of making your money back or whatnot. Those are resources that are good to be aware of. I mean, there's other larger societal issues at play that I can't really speak to. Unfortunately, especially as I age, I see a lot of my brothers and sisters who are in the arts. Art is hard, man. It's really hard on the body, and you sort of see it after a while. So, I mean, there's also those issues. A lot of people on Medicaid, people can't get dentist appointments, you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of those larger societal issues that are hard for me to speak to. Mm-hmm. But at least, something localized. It's like, well, how do you come up with money to put out a CD, mm-hmm. let alone vinyl? Like, I don't know how people are able to put out vinyl. I don't really touch that aspect. But, just to be able to all the different aspects of putting out an album, not only just the material cost, but also, paying, an engineer, a sound engineer, recording artist, mm-hmm. but also being able to have funds to pay the other artists or bandmates who are collaborating with you. That's a nice, it shouldn't be a luxury, but it's a nice resource to be able to tap into if you're able to research grant funding.
So financially investing in the people making this work, it seems like such a simple idea, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't always happen that way.
No, I mean, for day-to-day living, that's a whole other issue to tackle.
Right.
But
right.
just as something specific, just being able to find funding to produce your art, I think, being able to get good at grant writing is a valuable tool.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Not to mention writing a grant for something radical. I think that cities should look for the radical approach, look for the different approach. We've got enough of the nice and clearly evenly balanced. There are other subcultures that we have not investigated.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And that's pretty much why I was turned off by it, is that we collaborated with a lot of younger folks who were doing things that were more like rap and unusual type of R&B stuff and all that, and we collaborated with them because they couldn't get in, the clubs wouldn't allow them to play there. So we put them in our show because, we had asked the club if they would let them open for us, and they told us no.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, that's okay. And then I rewrote our script, and I put them in the show, and in the middle of the show, they pop out doing their rap, and I say, okay, see, I got you. Got you. And that's kind of why I was just turned off. And that's what tonight's premise is about, or today's premise is about. It was written about that and how these kids are having their revenge on the world by changing culture with subterfuge.
Well, artists aren't here to obey. We're here to lead.
Exactly.
There's a lot of tools that we have that other people don't.
Subterfuge.
Makes us special. Rosé, what can Chicago do for you?
I agree with everything that they said, and I also agree something about just housing for artists. Artists need to be able to live and to survive, and I also agree with Wei too, like healthcare for artists. I think our work is so important, what we do for the city, and I think it's important that people come out and show out to a lot of these, performances and like music events. I also think that after COVID, performance art has gotten kind of quiet in the city. There hasn't been as many available spaces to show work and to perform, and it's slowly coming back, but there's so many empty storefronts that have been closed, businesses have been closed, and it's like, let's give some of these spaces back to artists to do something, and when we do that, we engage with our communities, and we show kids like what it is that you can do, We're not just painting pictures and drawing, in a classroom, but we're actually engaging with our community and we're being alive, and that's what it's all about, And we need to invest in artists like at a younger age as well. There's now, I felt so lucky like growing up and having art education through my life, but now there's so many nonprofits that are out there that are like supplementing art education because it's just been cut from the budget, And so there are so many people that don't have access to art.
Yeah.
But if we give artists spaces in different communities around the city, like those become cultural spaces that people can go to, places for people to hang out, people to exchange ideas, people to live, And I think that's really where it starts, is, investing in art within our communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I very much agree. I want to thank you all for taking time to talk about all this stuff with all of us. I invite everybody to stick around for a bit. We'll probably take a little break to reset, but Ona's going to play for us, which will be great. I just want to wrap up by saying, so I was looking at some old calendars last night. I try to keep my calendars of like all the places that I'm going to, and sometimes it's just like names in some of the spaces that you mentioned, Michael, in your list. And I was looking at 2007 around this time of year, and my birthday's coming up this week, and I saw 2 performances within like a 2-week radius that involved all of you during that time. Rosé, you probably just got to Chicago around there. But
Probably, yeah.
you were performing in a dance kind of thing with, I believe, Heather Lynn and some others. If my notes are correct, it was at there was a church that is no longer, where they built out all of the townhomes by Maxwell Street, where it used to be. So Halstead, Roosevelt, somewhere around there. There was a church for a while that was empty that was doing this kind of performance. And so I'm like, oh, that's a great coincidence. I'm going to see that person tomorrow. That's great. And then I look, and then the next thing on my list is an Ono performance at the Viaduct Theater, which is now where the Constellation is. Mm-hmm. And I remember being so, there's a space between in that auditorium, or at least there used to be. There's like this space between the stage and the performer and the audience, right? So I just remember I had to get myself out of my chair so I could be in the music a little bit more. So I just sat on the floor next to all of you on the stage. And as soon as I saw it on my calendar, it was like, oh, I just had this experience with these people. This is great. So I hope that this series and all of this work and whatever you all take with you can make it so somebody has the same experience 50 years from now. I think cities only work when there's people like this making this kind of work, and when there's spaces like this making this kind of work. So thank you all for being a part of it. I really appreciate it.